reality. Welcome, everybody. I see over 100 of you have joined us. We're so grateful that you're here. Thank you. We're going to do a little bit of introductions of our programs, what we do, and we'll get into our topic for the day. So my name's Robin Hassler Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center, or you'll hear us referred to as STAC. We provide support to survivors of sex and labor trafficking, all survivors, regardless of any age, immigration status, male, female, everybody. And that's all we do. We also provide a lot of community education like this, and other things we'll talk about in a moment. We do care management. I should change that from case management, Graciela. Care management to survivors, and we've done that in a total, I think, over of 200 since our inception. And by the way, it's our 8th anniversary. STAC was founded 8 years ago, co-founded. I have the honor to have done that with Graciela and several others 8 years ago. It's hard to believe 8 years have passed. We do the work we do with many partners throughout the community, from our unhoused shelters to other programs, 211 Big Bend, all of the people, Ability First, many of our, the IRC. And the only way we can do this work is with our partners. We are, again, re-emphasizing with today's program, but also with our work, that we are looking into being better and doing better in our rural areas, and continuing on with all of the community education that we've been doing. And we do that specific to agencies as well. Today I trained at the schools, and Monday I'm going to be at our tax collector's office, actually. So we do a lot of that. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things that we do is we do our work for free, and we love to have people visit our website. On our website, which you see there on the screen, we have toolkits. We have one focused on youth and caregivers. We have community partners, and that could be anybody in the community, in your community. We've got posters for the healthcare community and workplaces, and we have lots and lots of other things. Our website's really rich with resources, and many of our items also are in English and in Spanish. Next slide, please. We started a podcast last year, and I'm very proud to let you know about it. We only interview survivors of trafficking, people who are lived experience experts. And this is a podcast where we don't go into sort of what I really feel is sometimes the exploitation of survivors after they've gotten out of situations. We're not here to talk about the worst things that ever happened to anybody, but rather to get their wisdom and knowledge about what we can do going forward to be smarter, to prevent trafficking, and to do better to walk with the survivors who do come forward for any kind of assistance or any kind of support. So if you're a podcast nut, I confess to being one, but also if you want to discover, I think, what's a really cool resource in our world today, which is listening to podcasts. It's sort of on-demand information for you. Go ahead and search for Imagine Freedom, and then you will also be able to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We have 5 up now. Excuse me, pollen. We have 5 up now, and we've talked to both sex and labor trafficking survivors. Next slide, please. Thank you, Graciela. You put our podcast up there. I appreciate it. For those of you who are local in our community, Taco Tuesday, this Tuesday, we are going to have our first community conversation about this beautiful mural, which looks very small on your screen. It's 5 by 8 feet. It was commissioned by STAC, and we are going to use this artwork to go into our areas, the 6 counties, which are primarily rural counties that STAC supports with anti-trafficking information and services. We're going to have this event. It's really to look at this mural, to be able to absorb it, and really talk about the power of art and what the symbolism of this mural is. You might see on the front of it, it says, "My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together." That's a quote from Desmond Tutu. And Nipa Tucker Eason created this for us, and we are so thrilled. We unveiled it at the end of January, and we'll be using this as a way to advance the understanding of trafficking, the realities. We hope we'll hear from community members who can come forward with new ideas. And by the way, everybody, especially if we have any students with us today in our local, please, please, please come in our and have some snacks, some great tacos from La Tiendita, which is fabulous, great Mexican restaurant here, and enjoy yourselves. So we hope to see you on Tuesday if you're local and you can make it at 5:30. Next slide, please. Okay, today, everybody, we have an amazing and a wonderful group of speakers to have a conversation about human trafficking in rural areas. You can see who's here with us today. We have Pastor Douglas Harris with Midway Unity Fellowship Church, and I'll tell you, Pastor Harris is also a board member of STAC. So, Pastor, thank you for being here. Mrs. Patricia Harris, who is a retired English instructor and guidance counselor, also cares passionately about this issue. Welcome, Mrs. Harris. Graciela Marquina, who is STAC's community services advocate. As ever, Graciela, thank you for being here today. And Mrs. Lolanda Kendricks Woods and Mr. James Woods, who I recently had the honor to meet. Welcome to you both, and we're so happy that you're with us today. So that's our panel, and everybody, I'd like to start now with going to a PowerPoint, a very brief PowerPoint that is here to sort of give you an overview of this topic of human trafficking in rural areas, I should say, and rural areas. You know, one of the things that we have found time and time again is when we start to do training on these issues, not only do people, let me make sure that you can see my screen. Can you see it okay? Yes, okay. Yes. Thank you. One of the things we always have happen, or often, is that people think that human trafficking only happens in big cities, only happens in places where there are, huge population areas, lots of commercial activity, lots of coming and going, airports. You always see pictures of, busy city streets. And what folks don't realize is that it's a reality in our rural communities. And that's why we wanted to have this program today. We're starting out with a very brief PowerPoint to kind of lay the groundwork. And then we're going to go to our panelists to really have a discussion. Would love to hear from you all as well, especially if you want to, right now, for those of you who provide information, support, services in rural areas, if you wouldn't mind putting that in the chat and just telling us, which part of the country or world you're from, if you're in what you consider rural areas, so we can get a feel for that. But in the meantime, I want to go over just some basics, and so we can be sort of on the same page when it comes to these issues. So again, the first thing is, rural areas are not usually seen as high risk like cities, but indeed they are. If you do look at any of the research, you'll see that human trafficking, and by that I mean both sex and labor trafficking, happen in our rural communities. And why, and what are some of the factors, and what are some of the sort of challenges that we have on that? In terms of getting services, we know that in general, rural areas, we've got long distances between homes. And there may be fewer services and supports to people who are vulnerable or who are victimized, and they may be less accessible services than people who are in, crowded urban areas. Sometimes we see greater poverty, not always, in rural areas, and fewer jobs. And it's that unmet need of that economic stability that attracts traffickers often to the area. Traffickers might be familiar faces in rural communities. What we've seen as well is that you could have local business people, the people you'd think of as your chamber of commerce, community, who are actually committing acts of trafficking kind of behind closed doors or using some of those legitimate businesses as fronts for hidden trafficking operations. And we've also seen that traffickers themselves, because of this misunderstanding about rural areas, feel safer in them. The myths we've heard, again, I've already mentioned that it only happens in big cities. It doesn't happen here. We've heard some people be under the misunderstanding that US citizens are not labor trafficked in rural areas, that it's only happening to immigrants. And that's totally not true. We've seen US citizens trafficked. One of the biggest cases is the Evans family farm case in Palatka, Florida, where US citizen African American men were trafficked, veterans, people who had substance use disorders, and that was in a highly, highly rural area of Palatka. Some people think that sex trafficking only happens in big cities. I had a community leader come up to me and say, "Oh, we don't worry about labor trafficking. Um, we cover we cover sex trafficking in our community, and labor trafficking is in the county," which made my head spin. Um, and we also see some subgroups sometimes, some population groups, whether it's an economic group, whether it's by ethnicity, race, age, where people say, oh, that doesn't happen to us. It happens to other people. And that could happen in rural and urban areas. One of the things that we recently did, and by the way, this program today is a kind of follow-up to our Gadsden County Forum, which Stack hosted on January 27th in Midway, Florida, small community. Some of our residents are here, where we talked about the challenges and the strengths facing our rural areas. And this is what came out in part in that meeting. And I think you might laugh and smile when I say everybody knows everybody has a strength. It can be a plus and it can be a minus, right? The support is there, but then you often find that you do have sometimes everybody knowing everybody's business can be a big help. I think we have an acronym NOSY, y'all. I can't figure out what that stood for. We got to talk about that. Pastor Harris, you came up with but we want people to be nosy. We want people to kind of not turn away when it comes to this issue. We know in rural areas, and I'd ask our speakers too, when they start, if they want to talk about how long they've been in the communities they've been living in, or had lived in before you moved here. I'm thinking of you and Mr. and Mrs. Woods, that you were in Ohio. You're recent transplants to Midway, but I know you've got family roots here. We've seen in our rural areas the strong connection to the land and to one another that is unparalleled because there isn't that transience and movement. We see strengths in informal networks as well as in the faith communities and other networks like maybe healthcare networks. And we also see that there's a nice overlap, that there's probably 1 degree of separation, that you might know somebody who, works in the city manager's office, say in Quincy, who's also in your church group and also has a child in the same school as yours. So we see that really close connection and overlap. And the one thing that came out, another thing that came out at our program is in our area in Gadsden County, as an example, we have several different entities that do home visits with the fewer number of homes and that need to connect people. We've seen some agencies that do those. It's always central for us to focus survivor perspectives. And so what I wanted to also share with you is some of the things that we've heard and we know about what survivors face in rural areas. So the everybody knows everybody thing might be a negative. There's a lot of shame associated with being trafficked. There's a lot of hidden things that make it hard for people to want to disclose. And they may not want to disclose because they may not be believed. There might be a great trust of any kind of authority, and I'm not talking law enforcement only. I'm talking about somebody from the Department of Children and Families or somebody even from the healthcare sector. We might see victims and survivors having language barriers and really have that fear about talking to anybody about the issue because of, again, the close-knit nature of communities. As well as very real threats of retaliation and a fear about that coming against them. as in all areas of our communities, whether rural or urban, we often find that people don't identify as being trafficked. They might see that their lot in life is such that it is, and they don't understand, or might not really want to accept that this is happening to them. And as I mentioned, with regard to services, there might be a feeling that no help is here for me. And how do they get out of the community only to get help? And really, we want to try to figure out a way so we can maybe brainstorm how you can get help to people who need it, and they don't have to leave their communities that they've known forever. So that's kind of an overview. What do you all think? If you all want to unmute, we can start our conversation. Um, and let me start off right off at the top here and ask you all to unmute yourselves on our panel. And by the way, we very much want to encourage all of you on the chat to chat in where you are, to come on in and talk about where you are calling us from. And if you have any comments on that little introduction or want to chime in on that or anything we talk about, I'll be monitoring the chat along with our panelists. Hi everybody. How y'all doing?
Doing good.
Good, good, good.
We're doing excellent. Yeah.
Yep. And Mrs. Harris, you good there?
I'm fine.
Okay. All right, so why don't we go around our Zoom room a little bit, and I'm going to start with Graciela, if I might, and just ask you to introduce yourself and maybe just give a couple thoughts, if you will, about why this topic is important. I mean, why do you think we're doing this today? And then maybe give, just because I'm kind of handing this off to my colleague here at Stack to also say a little bit about what you do so people will know what we do.
Sure. Well, like Robin said, my name is Graciela Marquina, and I am a care management manager for Stack. And so basically what I do is talk to people, victims and survivors, and determine what they want to accomplish and how they want to do it. So we create a plan. We use the trauma-informed care approach, and where we form a relationship with our, we call them clients, where it is equal and it is partnership. So I don't come and tell them what I think they need. They tell me what they want to accomplish. And so we create a plan, and my job is to, offer different resources and say, well, we have these resources here, we have that resources there, which comes to the topic to the rural area. Um, my goal is to get to know the local resources that each area has, because as a social worker, we need to work together. So when I came to Tallahassee, somebody asked me to do some kind of translation. This person had a little tiny community of translators that were providing services for free. And I will never know that exists if I wouldn't be called to go in and translate for, actually was Quincy, the Quincy community for the farmers. And I believe that there are little organizations that exist in the rural areas that we don't know. So my goal is that we get together, we know each other, and then they can call me. I can, spring in action, like Robin likes to say, and then I can also go and help any help. We need each other. There is nothing, there is no way that we can do it by ourselves. And I am very pleasantly surprised to see all the people that are with us. Like Robin was saying, there are people that go to houses. Healthy Start, for example, go to houses and they can see more things. They can, learn what is labor and sex trafficking. I see. I was just writing the name Michelle. I hope I am not mispronouncing. Stripling detective in Wakulla County. As a sheriff and in the sheriff department. So this is great because I see the community getting together and say, hey, how can we help each other? So, and I can keep talking, Robin. I don't know if I answered the question.
Well, I'll tell you what, the good part about this is we're all done with the PowerPoints and this is going to be a conversation. I'd like to open it up too and maybe ask you, Pastor Harris, to, as a STAC board member and as someone who I have to tell you, we value tremendously on the board, and we've got some board members on this call. Good to see you, Judy, as well, to talk about why you're on. I'm going to just ask you this, to talk a little bit about why you think this is important, and especially for us to focus on the rural areas where you live. I mean, it's immensely valuable. And I'll encourage this as anybody who is a nonprofit to make sure that you try to get people who are going to be on your board who reflect the communities you serve. And Pastor Harris, you've just been a huge treasure and just a wealth of information to us. So may I ask you to maybe say a few words?
Yes. Well. Hello, everyone. Of course, it's good to be with you today. It's very important, one, because it's something that touches everyone one way or another. You cannot hide from this. It is a dreadful cancerous disease, I want to call it that touches everyone. And because it is so, makes such an impact on a community, people's lives, families, it can really destroy their lives, really. There has to be something that we have to fight for those, I believe, that who cannot fight for themselves. I came to STAC. Came to a meeting, as a matter of fact. And of course, my wife and I, we have 14 grandchildren, and what really hooked me was the fact is I looked within myself to see what would I do if my grandchildren or if my children were caught up into something like this. How would I be able to handle it? So instead of being reactive, I decided to be proactive and become a part of the organization staff that touches this in every way that it can touch it. So it's important, one, because it has to be a stack of a source that goes out beyond the normal, I call it normality, the normal part of touching people's lives. Not only that, but there's a great follow-up system, I believe. And one of the things that I do know in the rural community is that don't start something you can't finish. There has to be a follow-up connection, and STAC has that follow-up connection, not only for a little while, but for a long while, along with the partners that also connect with. So I see us as being a resource. I see us being the source in a sense. I see it being one of the things we talked about a long time ago about how we connect with everyone to make sure that we can fight this monster called trafficking. So it's important in that sense. And also it's important because, one, we touch everyone's lives. It's not a black life or a white life or a red life or white. It's everyone's life. Everyone's affected by not by by trafficking, and we touched everyone's lives that way. So it's important that we have this type of, that we are able to reach out to people, educate them, and be there for them as a support system also. That's enough for me talking about.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And absolutely right. One of the strengths in rural communities is really the school systems, I think, and the connections through education as well. And we're lucky to have Mrs. Patricia Harris with us today, who is a retired counselor and an English instructor, teacher, who's affected many lives over the years. And you've been in Gaston County for some time. When I just mentioned about the long routes of connection in a rural area, I was kind of thinking of you. Would you like to say a few words and talk about why this issue is important to you and maybe reflect back on some of your professional your work and how that this issue could impact and improve those areas?
Hello. Well, let me say that yes, I have 50 plus years uh, with Pastor Harris, and I have 73 years, let's say, in Gadsden County. So it's growing up in, say, the rural area of Gadsden County, working on in the tobacco. And my sisters and brothers would probably say you didn't do anything, but of course I did. I did work. So, but that was during that time. The timing is totally different now than when it was when I was growing up. To say it's a totally different environment. We have so much happening in the world today. And so during those times, there were parents and the neighbors who looked after each other. So if your child was doing something or somewhere they had no business, then the next door neighbor would let your parent know. And it was that kind of collaboration. However, we kind of tiptoe around that in today's society, so to speak. And so it's conversations like this that may just open the eyes of individuals and parents and neighbors to try to get back to that place so that we can keep our eyes on each other's kids, that we can keep our eyes on our neighbors, so that when we see something, we can say something. We always saying, see something, say something. Right? We always hear that, but we got to get back to not just going with that cliche and actually putting it into action. And how are we going to put it into action? Through meetings just like this, getting the knowledge that we need, know what we're looking for, so that then we can address it. So I think this is one of the main reasons that a program like this, an organization like this, a setting like this is definitely needed.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll explore all those ideas and how we can do exactly what you're saying, I hope before the end of this program today. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Woods, we have not known each other for a long time. We met on January 27th, so it's been less than a month. But you came to that forum and spoke so eloquently and movingly and authoritatively about this issue of trafficking and how it affected your family. And also, you're kind of new to the Gadsden County area, but you have a lot of experience and experience from your prior residence in Ohio, right, about this issue. So why do you think this is important? And would you like to tell us a little bit about kind of your background and your history here? Uh-oh. I think you're freezing. Okay. Hold on just a sec. It looks like you might be freezing. How's your internet connection? Oh my gosh, this is how it goes sometimes with this. I think we might be having a internet problem here. I'm not sure what happened. We were doing so good in our practice area, but I see you're moving to a different part of your
Yeah, it's working better.
Okay.
Is it
So
better now?
yes, very much so. We can hear you and we can see you clearly. And might I say too, internet access is different sometimes in rural areas. So I'm just going to reflect the reality of this is what it is, right? It looks like you've moved into.
What it is.
Yeah. Okay.
My husband's getting his chair, and we're going to. So this has got to be better.
This is fabulously better. Thank you. We see you 1000%.
Lord.
Okay.
Okay.
Tell us
Go
about
ahead.
you and what you said the other day. Whatever you feel comfortable with. You look wonderful.
Okay, thank you. My husband and I had moved to Florida about 4 years ago. God has sent us here literally. The first incident happened in Ohio. One of our grandchildren,
Granddaughter.
one of our granddaughter twins had been, I left my notes, but they were being groomed by
A predator.
a predator that we had just brought them phones. They only had it for like a month. And I woke up in the middle of the night and it seemed like I was so upset. I was crying, couldn't figure out why I was crying. And I just went in the front room and just started praying. And God led me to one of the girls' phones. So I picked the phone up and I was like, what, Lord? And it said text message. So I went to the text message and it said on the text message, it had friend. So, I'm curious. I opened it up and sure enough, this man was showing his well, we're all grown. His penis was on the screen, and I seen that, and I was like, I woke James up, and I was crying, and I started reading through the messages, and it was just they were having messages back and forth. She had pictures of herself. She was only just turned 11, showing pictures of her vagina, excuse me, and her breast, all on the screen. We called the police and the police came out, and the last message this man, and I'm jumping through, the last message he left was, "Are you ready, baby?" So we were frantic. By the time the police got there, we showed him the messages and they said he wanted to meet with your child. This is what was going on. So the police officer talked to them separately, and then came and talked to us together. He told her that her pictures are now on the black web. They're never going to be gone from the black web. And he explained to her the situation and the severity. Mm-hmm. So we took the phones away at that moment. Then we moved to Florida, and it happened to the other twin. And she was having phone calls showing herself, him showing himself. And we called the police.
Yes, we got police involved. And there was an investigation behind that, and we were able to find out the young man that was texting the other granddaughter.
Yes.
And the police got involved there.
Mm-hmm.
So that stopped. But
it was also because the police officer said he was 18, and he was really upset about the young man, talking about his life was going to be destroyed. And I said, well, her life was going to be destroyed. At that time, this twin was going on 14, and he was trying to take up for the young man, which lived in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. So the officer, we were kind of upset with him because instead of him being concerned about her and how the conversation was, you can tell she knew nothing about what he was talking about, and you can tell he explained everything to her and showed her what they can do on the phone. It was ridiculous. And so our situation for this is saying that parents don't know. I mean, we give phones to our children. We gave them to our granddaughters because my daughter had passed away. We got custody of twins, and we thought we were doing something great. We thought giving them phones was going to just let them be part of the crowd. So I'm very passionate about this, and my husband and I came here and we joined a church called Everybody's Church. Our pastor, Gregory and Michelle Taylor. My husband's now deacon and I'm now an evangelist. And so we have bigger parts in the church and we want to be a part of this human trafficking because it's a very real and scary thing. So we have information too that we would like to share, not today, but on another. And my husband.
One thing that one thing about me, coming from my background, my work background, observation is one of my strengths. I'm nosy man. I am very nosy. You know, I grew up in a community of a village concept where everybody knew everybody and everybody was involved in raising everybody's children. And being so, that nosy attitude that I have, I'm always, if I see a vehicle or anything that I don't see regularly up and down my street, then I'm gonna be looking.
Yeah.
Because we never know.
Absolutely.
You know, when the children is getting out of school, I'm being nosy. I'm out looking to make sure that they get home because it's very important. Even that little short distance from the bus stop to the house, they could be kidnapped and forced into sex trafficking. You know, so I have that attitude where it's very important to me to know who's around me. It's very important to me that I get familiar with my neighbor because we don't even know what they're going through.
Absolutely.
You know, it could be something that's being forced on them. You know, so I see a lot of things, a lot of strength that I have because I don't meet a stranger.
And we should be nosy.
And we should be nosy.
Go in your room, go in the kids' room, raise up the mattress, look in the drawers, be nosy.
There's only so much privacy a child should have, and that's very, very little.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, good. You know, I thank you so much, and I'm so you know, I was moved before, and I'm sorry again to know that your twins went through this, that you went through this with them. And when we were preparing for this, we talked about how a lot of people don't think it's going to happen to them. Pastor Harris alluded this when he opened. They think, you know, I'm just getting my kids some phones, or this is normal. Kids have their nose on their phones all the time. I don't have to worry about it. I see them, right? We're right here. So know that I think if there's one message people can take away is that you really do have to stay involved in your children, your grandchildren, your any youth in your life and their online life, because
absolutely,
regardless of rural or not. But I took something else from your story. I took two more things, and I'd like to just throw this out to everybody from what you said. First of all, your grandparents, and very often we don't, I think, do as good a job as we should in reaching grandparents, because there are a lot of grandparents raising kids, and you know, you're valuable voices in this. So in your church and in your community now, I can see you going forward with that, and I thank you for that. So that's extremely valuable. The other thing is you got a bad law enforcement response. You know, you got somebody who was worried about the perpetrator more than your grandchild, your granddaughter. And I want to say there are some amazing, great, excellent, over the top, wonderful law enforcement officers out there, just like every profession.
And we met some. Yes.
And then there are people who have not stepped up to understand, right? They don't think that this is even a thing, and they don't, you know, they, whatever reason, they're not there. I see some folks here on the chat talking about, I see Sergeant Hanley from Hendry County, which is a rural county here in Florida. Thank you. You're the human trafficking liaison in your office. No smartphone for children under the age of 15 or 16. And then you restrict access. That's Sergeant Wanda Hanley's advice. And thank you for that, Sergeant, because that is something we can think about. The technology itself is neutral, right? It's just what's done with it, and that you can good and bad, yeah.
Good and
So
bad.
I took that too. That and when we had our forum, Captain Holmes from Gaston County Sheriff was there, and
Yes.
she may chime in now. And if I could ask Lisa, if you're on here, or Cassandra, um, Sergeant Holmes was a bit under the weather, but she is on, and she can come on via audio now. If we can unmute her, she's an attendee. But
Yeah.
Sergeant Holmes is an example of how you are proactive with youth in your community. That happened to you, and that was bad. But I
Mhm.
think that there are good folks out there as well, and we can all learn more. Let's face it.
Hey,
Um,
Jordan, this
yes.
is Lisa. What's her first name? And I can try to,
Uh-huh.
is
It
it
is
Angeline?
Anglie
Okay,
Holmes.
let me give that a shot and then she can go in.
Okay, great. Thanks.
She
Um,
was good.
Couple of things I want to mention to you all. There she comes.
Mhm.
Captain Holmes, thank you for coming in. I know you're a bit under the weather today. And as we go around the room here to do these brief comments, can you give us any insight or thoughts about this on this issue and what you are? You're with Gaston County SO. You are in the areas of Gaston County, which is a huge county. How do you see us coming into your area, and what do you think is important for us to be talking about?
Good evening. Can you hear me clearly?
We can.
Okay, great. Good evening, first of all, and thank you for this opportunity just to be a part of such an important subject matter, especially for our rural area and just for our city, our community, just to get educated and share this into this information. So, and also before I forget, happy birthday, First Lady Harris.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
Thank
um,
you.
so I proceed in regards to the subject. Like we were on the panel on the forum a few weeks ago talking about human trafficking, and here in Gaston County, large rural area farm community, we have a lot of migrants that come in. We have a lot of transients that come through, but just locally amongst our neighbors, amongst ourselves. I think that is very, very important just to be nosy. It's nothing wrong to be nosy, as I stated there initially at the forum. We have to be accountable for each other and be accountable for our citizens and our community, because our children, as we go back, are our future. As a law
Amen.
enforcement officer here in Gaston County for 33 years, you see indications and indicators that are around us all the time. You go to the beauty salons, you go to the nail salons, just watching the little children as they move, how they move, even along with the young ladies in groups, having one male and sometimes them standing in front of the stores, um, misrepresentation like they're with a church or like they're homeless on the corner. So those type of things, now gaining knowledge of that type of thing needs to make us more attentive. It's nothing wrong with stopping to ask a question, are you okay? Or just
That's right.
put yourself in a position, not in harm's way, but in a position just to take note as to what is going on. How often are these kids? What hours are they out and about? Is there looking around, you paying attention, looking around, is there a vehicle parked? Is there a subject watching them as they move about? And notifying law enforcement if you feel like something is suspicious. There's no law. If we don't take care of ourselves or our own, nobody will. So
Amen.
being nosy, and I know that Ms. Hassler mentioned we're gonna have to make that part of our human trafficking, to say it's okay to be nosy. Growing up, I heard Ms. Harris state, growing up in the community, it was what we did,
Mm-hmm.
especially in our culture. We paid attention to what went on at the neighbor's house, and we made it our business to look. to go over and ask you, what are you doing? Or to, to look upon, our kids. If you see Miss Daisy's daughter out of place or something seems strange, we made it our business to, to go and ask and inquire, or just to be nosy, as I said. So law enforcement, I want to piggyback on the Woods when they spoke about the type of service or lack of service that they got from law enforcement. I do think that training is very vital. Training
Yes.
in our agencies is very vital in regards to how serious this matter is. I am one that if you break the law, there are consequences to breaking the law. If someone is victimized by something like human trafficking, it is not the officer's responsibility is to do fact finding, but it is to submit and to investigate what has happened and what is going on, and run it up the chain. We had Mr. Campbell there, shoot it up to the state's attorney's office. You let them do the thorough investigations. I also shared something about a young lady. I was in the school as a school resource deputy and had no idea this troubled young lady, part of her behavior, it was the fact that she was being human trafficked by her mom and her mom's boyfriend, and being sold off for chickens and for drugs, and paying attention, like Miss Harris was as a counselor or a teacher in the schools, and even as pastors and ministers in our churches, paying attention and to new members and the children that they have with them. And
Yes.
it pays and it benefits our community to just be nosy enough to find out and pass those things to the proper authorities so that we can help each other.
Thank you so much for that. And as we go to Graciela, I want to make an observation in the chat, just as you're talking, Captain Holmes, about this, where somebody tried to report, was being nosy, it looks like, tried to report a runaway child and was told that there's nothing to do until it actually happens. So I'm not sure exactly if the child was threatening to run away and didn't, which I can understand that. But it seems to me if a child is making those kind of comments, it bears further investigation, maybe
Yes,
not
it
by
is.
law enforcement, but by a school counselor, by another trusted adult, to say that could be a red flag that something is going on, that child that might be a cry for help.
Absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Chrissy?
absolutely. I do agree. Those there are organizations and resources that are available for our community, and they need to be utilized for that. Just to make note, even law enforcement as myself, we're called upon a lot of times for a simple cause. My child is being disruptive. My child jumped out the window. My child woke up, they weren't in the bed, or they're threatening, saying that they're going to run away. It does not, it's not going to hurt for law enforcement or even could call DCF to say that these things are happening. There are resources out there, even with CCYS, there are counseling agencies through, I know our local colleges and universities. We have students that are going through they're going through internships, and there are resources. We just need to share the information so that when things do, people won't feel helpless. They won't feel like, oh man, I'm spinning wheels. They call the police for everything. I'm just gonna witness that. They call the police for everything because we are public servants, and they expect for law enforcement to at least have a resource in place or direct me somewhere to say that this is happening so that we could get some help. Even sometimes just talking to that child, it helps,
Right.
to try to find out what is going on. And I know for a fact, I have grandkids as well. And a lot of times they'll talk to somebody else before they talk to you because they feel like you're judging them, or they don't, they don't want to get in trouble,
Yeah.
or things like that. So a lot of times that's why I say you outsource a lot of things with the right resources in place. But I go back, I keep going back to training. I keep going back to partnerships in our community. I keep going back to, let's just stop talking about it. Let's be about it. Let's walk that talk,
Absolutely.
and let's make a move on what is happening. So I invite any resource that is going to help our community and help to push, this information out. These forums, these webinars, they are very vital. Take this information, take it back, let's share it. Even invite you all into our agency and say, hey, let's sit down, do a round table, have some trainings for our officers. This is what we need you to look for. Maybe they don't know what to look for, but it's our responsibility to make sure we
There's
get it
there
out.
are a lot of people here saying, yes, partnerships are key, connecting, it takes a village. And Graciela, they're singing our song, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes, and one thing that I wanted to say was that exactly Mrs. Holmes is saying. Some people don't know what they are looking for, so it's very important that they know. So Robin and I usually say this saying, which is the mind doesn't know. No, the eyes can't see what the mind doesn't know. So if we don't do training on ourselves, we can say stuff that we see, but if our minds don't know what we are seeing, we are not going to say it. So that's why it's very important, the training. And I wanted to train everyone. I wanted to go back to, there is a comment here from Lorenzo Munoz. He said that he used to coach. We'll wait until all the kids left with their family. One thing that I didn't think about this, Robin, is he is mentioning these rural areas with minimal cameras. So that's another thing that it is, among other problems with the rural areas. So people might not want to report because everyone knows everyone. So then you don't want to report because you might be later on accused of reporting something, or you don't want to report because the person that you're reporting goes to school or you used to go to school with those people. So Ms. Harris, I would love to hear from you about how to tackle this issue, which is whoever is reporting will be stigmatized, or whoever we're reporting, the person that is, well, hopefully we find the trafficker. But what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on repeat that little part about my thoughts on reporting.
Yes, and in a rural area where the fear, Graciela, do you want to restate it or?
Right. Well, what we have read is in rural areas, people don't report because everyone knows each other. So you don't want to be the person that is reporting and then later on being accused of reporting, or that the person that you're reporting is actually a family member of the boss of you or something like that. How do you tackle that issue?
I think. Oh, go ahead.
I would definitely say we have got to get out of that mindset. Because if we stay in that same mindset, we're going to just remain stagnated. We can talk until the cats fall out of the sky, and we will still be where we are. And so until we get these individuals to know that you're not helping by not reporting, even if that's your uncle, if that's your dad, if that's your brother, if that's your cousin, the most important part of that is saving whoever it is that they are abusing or they are causing harm to. And until we get that love within ourselves to be able to do that, we're going to stay where we are. In the educational system, especially with education, I'm sure in some other agencies, there's mandatory reporting. Just as a guidance counselor in the schools, there were many things that came across that I would see as a guidance counselor. And of course, it's mandatory. I can't let something happen and I know the child's mother, I know the child's father. That couldn't register with me because of mandatory report. That child is being abused. That child is coming to school looking certain ways, or that child can't walk, and then you wonder why they're walking that way. And then you find out that the bottom is so sore from beatings. You know, it's so many different things. And I know we're talking about human trafficking. There's abuse so many ways. And I think the kid may have gotten, you know, the spanking from the mom, but who knows if the child had not been sexually abused by someone, or the mom or the dad had that child into something illegal.
Yes.
And so you can't just let it go. And I was listening to Captain Holmes, and we're on target about the training, and we're on target about educating, because those two things, training and education, they are epic needs to combat human trafficking. They are epic in doing that, and it does not matter. And I was listening also to a point where it says, they don't want to report because that's my neighbor, so there are always excuses. We can come up with excuses about anything. I've heard the aphorism that says excuses are the tools of incompetence. They satisfy only their creators. So that when they ate, I can't do that. It wasn't anything much. It wasn't but so you're coming up with excuses.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anybody can come up with an excuse. But until we get the training, and when I say the training, especially in the school system, the training, we've got to train the parents. We almost got to re-educate parents. They got to come into another mind frame.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Got to educate them. And in that school system, it's not just the guidance counselor. It's the bus driver. It's the lunchroom instructor. It's the janitor. It's the principal. It's the classroom teacher. Don't remain silent. Even though you graduated with this child's mother and you don't want to say anything about it, you got to say something about it. So within the school system, I would say there has to be, I'm gonna say must be, got to do something. Almost say put a little pressure on it. I've been out of the school system now 14 years, but the passion is still there because I love kids. When you love kids, you do what you need to do for them. You do what you need to do for them. You regardless if you lose that friendship.
And
it's a friendship worth losing.
And let me also quickly add to your observation that sometimes people who are trafficked are not vulnerable adults or children. They're other adults who are being trafficked. And that same thing applies, that we have to understand that someone who's being labor trafficked in an agricultural setting, especially in these rural areas, at a working at a truck stop, working in a restaurant, that same kind of paying attention is required, of speaking up, because guess what? Those are parents also of children. Some people only focus on children and don't realize, number one, I mean, we've had it, Graciela, we've assisted survivors who might have been youth, and they turn 18, all of a sudden, believe me, they still need lots and lots of support and guidance. So once somebody turns 18, once someone is an adult, they might have an experience of having been trafficked as a child or not, but we can't forget that there's adult labor trafficking, adult sex trafficking, as well as child labor trafficking.
Right.
You know, children.
We see it with adults labor traffic, that we need to help them for years.
Yes.
So a child that goes from 17 to the fact that they are 18, that doesn't mean anything. It still need a lot of help. There is a comment here, Robin, that we would like to, I think we should address it, about it is about familial, it doesn't exactly say that, familial trafficking that we need to address.
Is this the one about the posting of pictures? Is that the
Yes.
comment you're looking at? Yeah, there's somebody who made a notation here that sometimes parents post, quote, sexy pictures of their children,
Yeah.
thinking they don't understand the implications of that. And so I know we're kind of off the rule because this could apply to anybody, but please do know that that can be very dangerous. Traffickers look for that. But in this day of artificial intelligence, they can even
Yes.
impose a picture of a child's head that is dressed normally
Absolutely.
on another
Absolutely.
body. So again, technology is neutral, but staying smart about technology and understanding how it can be abused is critical. Well,
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit on the topic of, again, going back to our idea of rural areas? What do you see as some of the strengths? And I love all the comments, by the way. I encourage you all to check out the comments of people. What are some of the strengths you see in rural communities in being able to address this issue? And I look at this panel and I see strength right here with all of you in your areas. But what do you think we need to do? What kind of strategies should we put in place for everyone who could be vulnerable or be trafficked?
Well, I wanted to say that um, when my son was younger, he used to just run away. And we were all in Ohio, the rule was you had to tell. You had to report that child. I don't care how many times you have to report it, because if that child goes out there and commit a crime or do something, or something happened to that child and you have reported that child missing, then that's going to be on you. So I think we should always report if our child leaves the house, because we never know what's going to happen if they decide they want to run away or whatever. I just believe that that is something that we should just do. We should always report if that child runs away. Because I was thinking about what Officer Holmes was saying, but I couldn't get in quick enough to say what I was thinking. But I think we should report when our children run away or leave the house and not back at a certain time or whatever, because they could be gone in seconds. And I think that it's important. So I was trying to answer
Now,
that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
coming back to getting to know your surrounding, getting to know who you live around and everything, I'm a person that don't meet no strangers. That's one of my strengths. And I will speak and greet and go. But also I will look and I will look and I will look, because you don't know what that person is going through. It's very important to not be afraid, because sometimes that fear of reporting, that fear of retaliation from parents can stop another parent from really taking that step to tell,
Absolutely.
to say something. It goes back to the old days. It goes back to the village concept.
Mhm.
That we don't have. That is something that we need, because
Absolutely.
that village concept was so comfortable with everyone that lived around, because you could speak to that child and you could speak to that parent. That other parent had no problem being able to speak to somebody else's child. Today's parents, they start young. We have young grandparents, so it's totally different. But we still have to not be afraid to get that message out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I did a training just this morning. I was telling them earlier, there were over 99 classes, separate classes in the Gadsden County school system today. And we were talking about human trafficking. And I started out asking the children, it was, kind of mostly middle school to high school, what they thought about trafficking and what was distressing. But when we moved past it, but what was distressing is a lot of those children, and again, and this was in Gadsden County, we're saying, first of all, trafficking is when somebody kidnaps you, somebody takes you, they were going right to the Hollywood versions of what trafficking is.
Yeah.
But we had to keep talking about how the traffickers that we know about through the people we've supported have been friends of the victim. They've been benefactors, they've been employers, they've been parents, they've been relatives, they've been those children have not been snatched or grabbed and thrown into the back of a van. They have been rather groomed over time by a trafficker who invests his or her money into giving them presents, taking them on trips, being the sweetest, best thing that's ever happened to them, and then making them work, taking them out of the area. And then there's sort of can be that movement. But I will tell you, there's great misunderstanding in the communities that we support about what trafficking is. People thinking it's that movie Taken when it is not.
I think
And the way
also,
Oh, they
I
got
think,
some movies.
I think
Oh,
one of the
man.
things that we have to do is keep it in front of the people. This is a good thing we're doing here, but it has to be a continuous piece, as well as all the other partners that buy into this also have to keep it in front of the people. Once we leave here today, we still have to continue to push it. Individuals have to push it. The churches have to push it. The different partners have to push it. If you don't keep it in front of people, even today when there's a school system, this just can't stop where you made the presentation. It has to be where they continue to push it all the time, all the time. All the time. I was reading about Dr. Jackson's remark. She said, I think I'm paraphrasing, keep pushing until they get sick of you pushing it, but keep pushing it because they need to keep it in front of them. Because the Hollywood version always will come out. And people always want to make it seem as though they want to make it seem, but we have to keep pushing it. It's a sense of urgency. And if it's not a sense of urgency for us, then we're not going to push it. But this is a sense of urgency. Lives are changed, people are dying. People are being enslaved, and family lives are changed. So we have to. My thing is that how do we deal with this? How does this work? We keep pushing it, keep it in front of people all the time. And I like Dr. Holmes. I like Angie's Captain Holmes about training. We have to keep training people about it. It should become a something regular that we're doing. I also read another note that there was the church plays an important role in this because one, we're internally as well as we're externally. There's a connection that we have that ultimately that it's not a different connection, but we have a connection both in the outer community as well as the inner community. And the church is a service. The church is a service organization. We build the principle on servicing people, and also churches that are known to solve problems. We could be a problem solver, and they have a very important role, I think, to play. They have a very important role to play in this. They can go outside. They can go to people that we can't go to. They can connect people we can't connect to because they are the church. So basically, I think that's one of the organizations we really should target in terms of keeping it in front of people. But they have to buy into it also. They have to buy into it and believe that this is really a problem.
And I want to thank you for that. And I think one of the things that rural areas have, and it is such a strong network with all the churches of all denominations, of all walks, etc. I think that's a huge strength. Want to also, just as you were talking, Pastor, somebody said, I think churches also need to have seminars. So as you were talking, somebody had already written that as well. Want to also reflect, someone said it's important to pay attention to what our children are reporting that their friends are saying to them. So, and I just put in the chat, y'all, I just put in our Youth and Caregivers Toolkit. We developed that. It's information online, and we have hard copies if you want us to get these to you. But the idea is that we wanted to have tools that would help parents talk to their kids, caregivers talk to their youth talk to parents also, youth talk to each other, to the point that's being made by Karen here, youth being able to talk to each other, as also parents to talk and understand what's going on by listening to what is being said amongst their kids and or online or whatever. So please, please, please go to that link. I'll put it again here, but that youth and caregiver toolkit was developed with the participation of youth and caregivers and people who work with kids. Painstakingly, we went through this. It's fun, it's easy to read stuff, and it'll help ground you. Also, there's lots of great information here in the chat about other resources and the importance of talking. There's some things, just if y'all want to scroll through, there's so many great comments. I thank you for your information here. Everything Christina Sanchez says, feeling like a victim also makes some girls feel vulnerable and defenseless. There's a sense of guilt that they allowed something like this to happen. And just, it's about, how do you reinforce and build up someone who's had this happen and feels that sense of responsibility? That's another reality where they might not come, as you said, to you, but it's part of a healing. One of the things that a kid said today on it was, and it made me concerned, I'm going to circle back to them, is they said, what should you do if you're in a trafficking situation and you're afraid to get out of it? A child asked that this morning.
Those things also, Ms. Hassler, that we should take into account and listen to. It might be a cry or indicator that there is something going on, or they may know something that is in trouble. So those type of things, that's why I go back to the education and the training and the enforcing of laws. And when we see these things, sometimes getting together and going to the legislator, going to the Capitol, say, hey, we got to push this, because nobody, and this is just from years of experience, a lot of times laws do not get passed until it happens at home. Traffic, when somebody's child or something has got stopped and getting a ticket, or somebody's child has got killed, in a DUI, then, it matters to them. But as a community, getting together and go and, knock on some doors and let our voices be heard, because we don't want it to happen anywhere, but let's not wait. Let's be nosy, as I said earlier. And one of the things I was talking about in being nosy, in the letter N, notice our community and the things that are going on within our community. The O, observing all the norms so that we can help each other. The S, because someone may be out there that is crying out for help, like that child, and might be a victim, may be victimized. And then through E, educating and training and enforcing these laws that need to be made and the laws that stand, so that we can stand behind them, be a voice, and for you and yours. That's the why. So binding together, partnering with every level, local, state, and national level, to make some movement.
We love that nosy. It's resonating again. Graciela, you had some.
Yes, I am seeing, reading a great from Karen Thompson Pollard, I don't know. Karen is telling that it is important to pay attention in what our children are reporting regarding what their friends are sharing with them.
Yes, yes.
And that's one of the things that I want to work really hard to, when we talk with kids in general. I think the approach, or what I have learned, is that it's not, it might not be you, but when it is happening to other child, and they do know. They know. So when the parent is paying attention to what the child is saying, it's great comment. Thank you so much, Karen.
We're going to try to get the chat too. There are so many great comments here. I'm going to ask Cassandra and Lisa to send me the chat. what we like to do with these, and I haven't said this yet, I can't believe it, but we are going to post this as we do all of our Third Friday programs. We post these recordings after the fact, and we will clean up the chat and post this for you. Here's where you're going to be able to find it going forward in about a week or so. Whoops, wrong. And we'll be able to have this available so you can look and get all those resources and check them out. Really appreciate all of you who share your expertise around that. Keep it up. We want to make sure we get this information out to everybody because we're, you know, let's face it, we're all teachers and we're all students here today.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say that my wife and I, we are in it to win it.
Yeah.
We are committed to the cause, you know, because this is very, very important to us.
Mhm. Yes,
Thank
it
you.
is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that makes a difference more than anything is the one-on-one connections that you have with each other. You know, we are here to support you as you go out to your village. You know, and just to also encourage or to build on what Captain Holmes said, talking to legislature, but I really want you to start to talk to Midway City commissioners and Gadsden County commissioners and
Yes.
we need to have resources allocated for this issue of training. We need to have a new deputy. I don't know, how many new deputies do you think you need, Captain Holmes, to be able to do proper investigations there? Do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
It's where you show the value of what you show your values and where you put your money. And in this case, what are local governments doing, city and county, to support this issue? At the very least, have a proclamation every year. Nosy Villagers, Madeline Robinson, you win the prize. I love that. We
Yes.
need to form Nosy Villagers. I love that. Thank you.
Love it.
So anyway, another thing to do, I also want to give you a little commercial for next month. Next month, we're going to have a discussion about what the schools are mandated to do and what we need to do to motivate schools across our whole state to focus on this issue. We're going to have expertise from the FSU College of Law because they were the ones that came forward with advocating for a rule change with our Florida Department of Education that required every school to have a plan on trafficking. I will tell you, it is observed more in the exception than the rule. If you try to right now, and somebody said it in the chat, talk to your local school board. What are they doing right now to help, again, not just children be educated, but the bus drivers, what you said, Mrs. Harris, everybody from A to Z, as well as athletic coaches, as well as you know, the food service, janitors, everybody needs to understand how to spot this issue. So I really want to encourage you all to join us next month. That's going to be the third Friday in March. Quickly, I'll tell you that we're going to have it up on the website soon, but that's going to be on the 15th of March, same time, 1 o'clock. So check out, if you haven't gotten on our newsletters, please go on our website and do that so we can make sure that you need to be advocate. I'm just saying this because we're doing this here. We all need to be advocates to our local leadership. And we've talked about the schools about 50 times today at least. So what are your schools doing and how can you be kind of shaking the trees to get some action there?
I wanted to say at our church. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gerard, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying at our church, our pastors make sure that everybody fills out the questionnaire. Everybody knows who everybody is, especially when we're dealing with children. So I think that's important that, you know, the leaders should have something where they know their congregation, you know, just in case, you know, have all the information that they need on each person at their church to also help with the situation. So I think that's a good deal.
And I agree. I definitely agree with you to know the roster of your church, the kids, because even at Midway, sometimes you've got those single parents, and situations happen at their schools. And I know Pastor and I have actually, through the permission of the parent, have been able to go to the schools as an advocate with a parent, because sometimes parents, the kids don't listen to them, as someone has said, and they will listen to someone else more so than their parents.
Absolutely.
So it's like going there as an advocate and that helps that parent to better understand, because there's a misunderstanding with the parent and the child. And so the child may listen to me, or they may listen to pastor. And so when you go as a unified force, that child knows that there's love there and there's love there at the church, and you're looking out for them. And as Robin has already said, yes, we're concerned about sex trafficking with children and adults as well. And so we do have kids who may be in home settings where the parents are the ones that's trafficking. You got those kids there, and they are afraid to say anything at school. I've always said what we've got to do and what we've got to know, and I've always lived by this: a child doesn't care how much you know. They didn't care whether I had a master's degree or a doctorate degree. A child doesn't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Man.
Absolutely.
Amen.
That's true.
And that comes from being firm and consistent
Absolutely.
with how you speak to them, not judging them, but letting them know that we're not judging you. We're here to love, show you love and understanding, to help you. We want you to feel comfortable enough to come to us.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes if we start to showing that we're judging them, we're trying to discipline them, stuff, my thing is, how was your day in school? Did you have a good day in school? That's one of my themes. Did you have what is it today made today better than yesterday? Because a child, they hear that, and they want to hear that. They want to know that you care. They want to know that you're observant. They want to know that we're not just looking at them, but we're looking at all the situations that they may be in, because kids today go through so much.
Absolutely.
They go through so much.
You're getting some great reactions here. People are encouraging open-ended questions like that. So not yes or no. And also, Karen says also to say things like, tell me more about that. Or what would you do if someone approached you in that way? Like just asking for those kind of comments. I'll tell you too, a friend of ours, Vanya, told me about her daughter who actually went to her and told her, Mom, I was just online and this guy is asking me, do I have any sisters and brothers and where I go to school? And she says, I don't think that's right, is it? And immediately she knew, because Vanya had the talk with that child to say, if someone asks you these things, even if they say something like, do you have a dog or a cat? Kids don't realize that those innocuous questions can go into, that's because that trafficker later will say, I'm going to kill your dog unless you do this for me. So even those, those kinds of things are things parents have to affirmatively talk to in schools to their kids about that. We are nearing the end of I've never seen a chat like this in any of our programs.
Wow, yeah. Can I add something really quick, Robin?
Yeah.
Having the conversation is not only one time, because when I had talked to parents, they go like, well, we did have the conversation, but it feels that it's uncomfortable and it is only one time. But as one of the Liz said in our podcast, is we have to feel comfortable to have the uncomfortable talk, and it has to be appropriate age several times. That's what I just wanted to add.
Right. That's, yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to do this. Graciela mentioned our podcast. I will tell you that if you haven't explored podcasts yet, I encourage you to, because on our Imagine Freedom podcast, a lot of them are focused on child sex trafficking, and I want to thank Christabel Robinson, who's actually on this, who was one of our interviewees. Christabel, sending you lots of love for all of your your participation with us. But you really did an amazing job, as Liz did, in pointing out really how this happens and how we can all do something to help. So here's the link, everybody, to our podcast. Liz and Christabel are the first to really encourage you to do that. What a great group today we have. Do we have any last observations from a fantastic panel before we have to close out in 3 minutes, y'all? The floor is yours.
Well,
I had a
my
wonderful birthday. Wonderful
awesome.
birthday.
Happy birthday again.
Awesome. Yes. Happy
One of
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
Yes.
That's a great observation. Yes. All right.
my final observation is that
It's
we just
awesome.
can you,
Uh-oh, I think we're losing you, Captain Holmes. You want to say that again?
can you
I think, Pastor Harris, I think we might need you to mute for just a sec. You've got
Yeah.
some sound coming in there. Okay, good. Go ahead, Captain.
hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My final observation is that panels like this are needed. And I think it, like Pastor Harris said earlier, we just need to be about our business. As a lot of the kids say, stand on our business and educating, training. And that's just reinforcing what we're talking about today. Don't let it end. It needs to go and spread abroad. And we start in our churches at home and at home to educate and talk to our kids about what the real things are, real aspects are surrounding human trafficking, what to look for, those things like that, and to broaden the horizon about stretching this information and pushing it out into our communities. So I appreciate you all for inviting me to be a panelist today. And I'm looking so much forward into working closely with you all so that we can make a dent into this horrific epidemic.
And Captain Holmes, I want to tell you, we've got a mural that we just unveiled here in Tallahassee. We want to bring it to Gadsden County, every place and any place you want to do that. Let's talk about that. We want to have community conversations. So that is on the list.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Any other final conversations?
Oh, put me in, coach. Put me in, coach. I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Put
To
me in,
the
coach.
school.
I
Put
love
me in,
it.
coach.
All right. Mr. and Mrs. Woods, any final remarks here? Thank you.
I'm just honored. We're just honored, and we just thank you for allowing us to share.
And we also want to continue to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you've inspired us all. Thank you. Pastor Harris, do you have any final thoughts here?
A great webinar, great information. Of course, I just want to remind us to keep pushing it. Don't stop. Just keep pushing it. This is a strategic thing to do, not just do it, but a strategic thing to do. To keep pushing it, keep it in front of the people at all the time, and keep it in front of the people all the time again, and keep it in front of the people all the time again.
There you go.
That's one way to get it out of there. Get it out of there.
Thank you for sharing.
That's great. Thank
And
you.
keep it in front of the people again.
There you go.
We got that. Yeah. Graciela, any final remarks and thoughts?
Wow, if you give me the microphone, we're going to stay here all evening. So no, it was great. It was great participation. Thank you so much for the panelists and everyone that is online and giving great ideas and all that.
Somebody's just talking about another podcast called Galvanize and Restore. Looking forward to checking that out. Awareness for church members. Okay, great. I just want to say my last words are what somebody said here. We all need to be nosy villagers.
Yeah.
especially in our rural areas, but wherever we are, you know, it's forging those connections. I think those connections, and as we act with integrity and love, and with really the place to connect and support one another, we will be able to end this. So I thank all of you so much. We did lots of great prep, and I really appreciate you all for being part of STAC and part of our work here locally. And we're honored to be part of what you all are doing. So with that, I say happy birthday to you, Mrs. Harris. We all celebrate you. And we will see you on the 15th. I hope everybody to come back and talk about human trafficking and what we can do in our schools. Have a great weekend, all.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Robin. As
Welcome.
always, you're great.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Have a
Thanks
great
all.
weekend.
Bye.